Reality is what governments are supposed to deal with. If we want to end abortions, we need to look at unwanted pregnancies, much of which stems from our social approach to sexuality, which both liberals and conservatives are guilty of dealing with from unrealistic perspectives. It also has to do with how our economy is so tough for most people to survive in that it scares a lot of women into believing that bringing new life into this world will ruin theirs and the child's life, which is truly genuine concern. But neither one of these aspects of ending abortion is addressed by either party in such a way as to eliminate the need for abortion. That's why the issue keeps resurfacing, because abortions haven't gone away and we want them to. But outlawing or making them legal are both shortcuts that don't solve the problem. However, building a society where there's no demand for abortions will. Just like every other issue we debate, both sides address them from self-serving ideological perspectives rather than using common sense so to let these kinds of problems solve themselves. What about climate change? If you listen to Al Gore, you likely fear we're on the verge of reaching a tipping point where global warming will begin and we won't be able to stop it. If you listen to the other side refute his claims, you come away with the impression there's no such thing as man-made climate change because Al Gore can be proven wrong. Then there's a third side of the debate you've likely never heard about, but is supported by the best climate scientists in the world. In fact, even the ones who support Gore's half-baked CO2 theory quietly stand behind this third rail of the climate equation. Do you know that plants emit pollutants that affect weather in the regions they emit them from? And that these naturally occurring emissions help form rain clouds and even lace those clouds with fertilizers so that when it rains, it falls back down on the plants? Do you know man-made pollution is much the same as these natural pollutants coming from plants that cause local weather pattern changes? If you did know such a thing, would you then be willing to believe that the kinds of man-made pollutants that have the most dramatic effects on the areas we live in can easily be controlled at a cost benefit to us while they are also the worst for our health? Or that the government's sitting on piles of studies that show this to be fact, research you paid for to be done by the highest respected climatologists in the world using the most sophisticated atmospheric modeling technology ever conceived? Would you believe these same scientists can recreate our weather in computer models, then figure out how to alter it to make it cooler or warmer by adding or removing different levels of certain pollutants, where the level of carbon dioxide makes no difference in how we're affected by it? But when the issue's debated, all we hear about is carbon footprints and whether CO2 can cause global warming or not, a theory that doesn't take into account climate effects from local pollution on local weather. Of course, getting anything constructive done with all these state-of-the-art technologies we paid for would mean our political leaders would have to be more interested in serving us over their banker friends on Wall Street who don't want us to know how so many of our problems can be solved at the local level because it negates their plans to sell us their dysfunctional services through either big corporations or government intervention. I mean, Wall Street can say it hates big government all at once. But if you follow the money, you will quickly learn that Wall Street is big government, where all those trillions we pay in taxes somehow finds its way into their pockets. What they mean by saying they hate big government is that once they have our money, either from us handing it directly to them through paying our bills or by them getting it from government after we've been taxed out of it, they hate the fact that the government wants some of it back from them in the form of taxes instead of just getting it all from us. What they mean is a certain amount of wind is taken out of their sails after they've gone to all the trouble of purchasing the government of the most powerful and free nation in the world, where then they have to pretend they don't hold absolute power over us by paying taxes. What they mean is that although absolute power corrupts absolutely, it isn't as much fun if they have to hide it while wealthy oligarchs and other less powerful countries don't. Look at immigration. Who's talking about the fact that there wouldn't be an immigration problem if the states south of our borders weren't habitable? Not just for the immigrants who come here to escape them, but for us. Mexico has every bit of the natural resources that Texas has, but it's still a third world country. We say it's because of the corruption there, but then we're addicted to the cheap labor that the problem they have there creates for us here. I just gotta believe that if we weren't so happy about having Mexican, Central, and South Americans doing our dirty work cheaper than we're willing to do it ourselves, those countries would become more like places we would want to move to so as to expand our horizons rather than leaving them in the wake of the few of us whose greed is making it so neither they nor we want to live there. Then pile those problems next to street drugs being illegal here, therefore offering Southern Americans who aren't cut out to do menial labor that doesn't pay enough to support a decent lifestyle, those more inclined to be in self-starting entrepreneurs, innovators, and businessmen, but who grew up without access to legitimate opportunities to let their natural talents work best for them and their communities, they naturally take up the opportunity to flood our streets with expensive mind-altering drugs that cost very little to produce while bringing high levels of crime to our communities with them. In the end, we wind up with a myriad of problems that are so expensive to pretend to solve that we could literally rebuild the economies of all the Americas cheaper if we could somehow get out from under it all. But then all that money we're throwing away dealing with these problems is going into someone's pockets. And if you look close enough, you'll find that these same parties are spending a great deal of time hanging around on Capitol Hill with both Democrats and Republicans. In response, some of you might ask, who would harvest our crops without driving up food prices, or collect our trash or clean our homes and offices without driving up the cost of everything, if we tried to work together with our southern neighbors, and even those who cross our borders illegally, and try and come up with ways that will work for everyone? But then, how would that equation change if our neighborhoods did more than look like props on a Hollywood set where, instead of grass that needs to be mowed, there are gardens that provide a bounty of local harvests that keeps money from leaving the community en route to Wall Street? Or if all the energy-providing technologies you never hear about were applied at the local level, so when Wall Street comes up with their next scam for how to crush our economy, we still have enough food and power supplies that we can sell to each other rather than having to buy our way out of the problems they cause by going through them. There's virtually nothing that we can't provide for ourselves at the community level that Washington or Wall Street can do a better job of by us sending them our money to do it for us. And if you're thinking how most Americans don't want to do the kind of work that this kind of lifestyle would require, what you really mean is most Americans don't want to do real work because it means getting paid third world wages. As to the argument about how paying honest wages for honest work would raise the price of everything, it would also put more money in our pockets to be able to pay for them while adding a whole new class of worker to the consumer market who previously couldn't afford to shop. This new demand would then drive the prices of everything back down again. That's without even talking about how much crime and the other biggest drains on the economy would work themselves out, therefore lowering or eliminating the need for many taxes. But these kind of perspectives ignore why we're not already at this place I'm talking about where everything works the way it ought to. Because if we could solve our own problems this easily, we wouldn't need big government and banks to run our lives for us. You see, it's no mistake that we depend on so much of what we need coming from outside our communities just to simply survive. If we built our communities so we were free of these kinds of burdens, then the kinds of personalities, which I say personalities instead of people because people can change while so can the mold society offers them to choose from who they want to become. But change in the right directions means the kinds of personalities who seem to think it's their job to rule over how the rest of us live our lives would have no voice with which to enforce their views on us. You can try and say it's greed and corruption that drives up many of our problems. But the truth is more wealth can be created by dealing with the problems in ways that work rather than always making things worse. So now that we know what's behind causing our problems and how to deal with them, all we have to do is do it because there's nothing standing in our way but our lack of having not already done it.